What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down something with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm also going to talk about why the robotaxi event is going to be very important for Tesla and some big catalysts coming out for the market for tomorrow. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. If you deposit $25,000 more, you're guaranteed 75. The offer ends very soon in just about 3 weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about the market. So I just want to mention that SPY has a very, very nice looking uptrend that's been respected. And the market's continuing to break to new all-time highs, very close to all-time highs from yesterday. The question is, will we push even more? What's my view of the market? How do I think this is going to move? And as of right now, despite the fact that the market is bullish, I still have some warnings about how this is going to go. So just know that what happened today was we had CPI data, and the data wasn't that great. Some things were okay, other things were just not that great. So for all items CPI, this was still okay because we had inflation month over month at 0.2% for all items. That's a little bit above what we were expecting and about the same as what we saw before. So that's why it's okay. Like it's a little bit above expectations, but still not that bad. Inflation for all items year over year was at 2.4%, which is a slight decrease compared to before, a little bit above what we were expecting at 2.3%, but still not too bad. So it was also okay. So all items CPI was okay, but core CPI was not as great. So month over month was at 0.3%, the same as before. We were expecting 0.2%. So not that bad, still okay. But what wasn't that good was all items year over year. I'm sorry, not all items. Core CPI year over year. That wasn't as good. So core year over year wasn't as good at 3.3%. That is above what we were expecting, a slight increase compared to before. Sure, it's only a 0.1% increase. So it's a very, very tiny increase, but not the best of news. That's why the market kind of dipped a little bit. We saw the market retest some lows only to get bought back up. Now, this is what the charts look like. So if you look at CPI for all items, this has been on a big downtrend, 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 not looking too bad. And you guys could see that CPI is still looking a lot more tame. We were expecting it to dip a little bit more than how much it did, but still not that bad. Then on top of that, for core CPI, this wasn't as great. You guys can see there's a slight little increase right here. This is the first time we got an increase since back around that March period when it was flat. That's the first time that happened in quite a while. So not the best of news. Could this be changed in 1 month? Maybe. Could this be very minor? Yes, it could just be a coincidence. We'll have to wait and see. We'll see what happens with the whole Israel and Iran situation, how that ends up escalating. We'll see if that affects oil prices and such. So be very patient with that, as it's going to be another factor. Now, another big factor for tomorrow is also going to be the big bank earnings, as we have JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and BlackRock all announcing their earnings. We'll see what the banks say. Whatever they say could cause a lot of volatility, so be ready for that. I think it's going to be very key for the markets. So be ready, guys. Watch your levels very, very carefully, and we'll be very patient with the way things are moving. Don't forget that Wells Fargo, BlackRock, and all these tickers are very important for the banking sector, which is what finances many of these other companies. So we'll see how things go. Be very, very patient and mindful of all of that, and we'll just wait and see what ends up happening with these earnings. I also want to mention the market's still at greed. Excuse me. Momentum is still very greedy, as that's making up the majority of sentiment. We're neutral in terms of our put and call option ratios. We start to see a little bit more put buying, and the VIX is still remaining kind of weak. So the market remains bullish, but things could shift depending on different factors. Now, there's one more thing I want to talk about that's very important. That's going to be Tesla. So Tesla has the We Robots event today. It's going to be very important. The robotaxi should be announced very soon. But whether or not Tesla gets a bounce depends on many different factors. So I'm going to transition to Tesla real quick, then I'll talk about SPY and the others. For the Tesla robotaxi event, so what do I think about it? So Tesla's been downtrending approaching the big event, and typically that's not the best of signs. We do have this little wick right here, and that could signify an opposite reaction. So that could be promising, especially as the 4 hour has a potential cup and handle like structure as well. But we'll see how things develop. So, what is my view of all this? So, what's basically happening is Tesla's going to give us a nice presentation of the robo taxi. They're going to talk about how it could be coming out soon and all these different things. I don't think we're ready for the robotaxi yet, but we need another like really important update. It may take years until it officially launches, but I think that when it does come out, it's going to be huge. So that's what Tesla's going to be looking out for. They're going to present this. They may give us more updates on Optimus and their AI capabilities. But the big thing for investors is not going to be just the robotaxi, but also their new model. I think that's going to be very, very big for the share price. So we're waiting to see if they end up announcing that. The event is going to start today at 7 p.m. Pacific time, which is about 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so very late at night for people on the East Coast. And then whatever happens, guys, it's going to depend a lot on what Tesla announces. If they show us a Cybercab, for example, or the $25,000 robotaxi, that could be very, very big for them. If they announce the Model 2, that could be a huge catalyst, and that's going to cause some upside. So Tesla, whatever it does tomorrow hinges upon this event. Okay. If Tesla fails us and the robotaxi does not, it's not presented properly, they try to show it and it fails, that's going to be a bad sign. The share price could drop. If they present the robotaxi and it goes well, and that's all they do, if they show like a potential robotaxi and just like very, very minor things, they don't give us like too many updates. It might not be enough to get the share price to bounce. We could still sink all the way down to 220. Investors want a new model. They want something that's going to bring back their revenue. They want something to help get their sales up. And the answer is not just a robotaxi, but a $25,000 EV. That's the big thing. If they present the robotaxi and they do it well, like, it's all awesome because we know they're going to do that. But then if they give us like a lot more updates on FSD and their capabilities as they're developing autonomous technology, and then they, on top of that, announce a $25,000 EV or some kind of new Model 2, that's going to cause the share price to bounce. And the share price could rally once again back up to the highs we saw. The 252 area could be broken. We could be looking for 260 as our target. So if they do really well, give us a new model, and they present the robotaxi well, and then they talk about the Model 2, they unveil it, that could cause the share price to bounce well into the 250s, if not 260. If the opposite happens and we don't get a new model and it's just about the robotaxi, they say the same things they've said before, and it's not as promising as what we were expecting, Tesla's going to crash to the 220s. Okay, so that's what's going to happen. It all depends on the event. It could also affect like a lot of these other companies, so be ready for all of that. As far as SPY goes, as of right now, we are bullish technically speaking, but there is one concern I have. So when you look at the chart like this, we're going to actually close these. I want to mention that we have a triple bearish divergence developing on the MACD. And this is happening as we're getting closer and closer to the election. Seasonality suggests that around October, we do tend to turn more bearish, so keep that in mind. And then we have this rising wedge that's continuing to develop just like this. So there's a rising wedge developing just like this. If you want to draw it out like this, however you want to draw it out, doesn't matter. And, this is rising as we get very close to November. I think that SPY is going to form a top very, very soon. We're getting very, very tight. If you guys notice, it's getting tighter right here. So I think that the rising wedge is going to play out, and we're going to be looking for a big rug pull soon, a big one. I think that SPY still has some gaps to fill if you look at the daily charts. I think that that's going to most likely be the case for us as we see a lot of new developments. We have this gap all the way down here in the 530s. So I'm thinking we might come all the way down there sometime during the election period or whenever that time is. So I want everyone to be very careful and very mindful of what's about to come. My view of the market is we are technically bullish right now. As long as SPY is above 568 to 565, we are bullish. And we're holding above the previous all-time high at 575 very nicely, making new all-time highs. So SPY could push 580 technically, depending on how PPI data looks. But the problem is there's a rising wedge and a triple bearish divergence on both the daily. Well, the daily has a double. I think it's developing into a triple. It could become a triple. We'll see about that. But the 4 hour is showing a triple bearish divergence, which tends to lead to more downside. So could we go higher? Yeah, we could. They could try to artificially pump this to 580 if they want. Maybe the high is in, we'll see. But I think 577 to 580 may be very close to where the top happens to be. And then as we get closer to the October period, we're going to be looking for a rug pull, in my personal opinion. I think that's going to be the most likely case. That's what my view is, at least for the time being. Let me just bring back my lines. Going on ES, we have something very similar developing. ES basically has a very similar rising wedge like structure. And we also have this gap to fill down here. So could we push higher to about 58.50 after PPI comes out? Sure. They could try to push it higher. But my general view of the market is I'm still bearish. There's a clear triple bearish divergence on the 4 hour on ES. We have a gap to fill. So I think what's going to happen is we push a little bit higher. We could try to push close to all-time highs. Whether the high is in or not, we're still determining that. But we could hold up for the time being. But as we get closer to November is just 3 weeks away. This thing is going to start slowing down. And then after the election, who knows what's going to happen? There could be a rug pull. So I anticipate there's going to be a rug pull coming. heading into the election, maybe even after the election. And then with all the events that are panning out, that could lead to a big shift in the market sentiment. I think that historically that's what tends to happen when it comes to our data, when it comes to the way the market moves. So be very mindful of that. Seasonality does tend to play out, and that could cause a very, very big move. For Nvidia is trying to push, but look at the resistances around this 135 zone and then also at 140. So we could push into the 135s close to 136. It's possible to go a little bit higher tomorrow, but then once we're at that resistance, depending on how PPI goes, be careful and see if Nvidia gets a rejection or not. Will we dump from that resistance? It's also possible we have a symmetrical structure right here in the middle, which could take us all the way up to the high towards like 137. Then we start dipping back down before we try to bounce again. So that could be what Nvidia is about to do from a giant symmetrical structure. So watch resistance. We might go a little higher to 137, 136 to 137. And then if that breaks 140, and then we'll see if you reject. I still hold the same view. Bitcoin is looking a little bit more bearish. We have a head and shoulders like structure. If we manage to break past 61,000, we could turn back up. If 60,000 fails, this will be dipping back down towards the 59,000 area, then obviously below that. With the head and shoulders here, we could try to pop a little bit to the 60,500 area, then we'll start dipping all the way down to about 59,000. I think there's a good chance we might be dipping. So be very mindful of Bitcoin. Still looks kind of bearish to me. Going back to Tesla, just know that technically speaking, I forgot to mention this, we are technically bearish. When it comes to technicals, we've been making lower highs and lower lows. But will this get a big bounce? Because technicals are not everything for Tesla. It depends on the robotaxi event. For NQ is once again trying to push for 20,500. If we reject and we don't break that, we could be looking for a dip. So what I think is happening is NQ might be forming a giant, a very interesting structure right here. We may attempt to push a little higher to about 20,500. If that breaks, we're going to likely go a little bit higher, very close to all-time highs, but then we could reject later on. To me, the Qs are still showing some potential. We're not done yet. So I think we could test 20,500 depending on how PPI goes, and we'll see if we reject or not. For the QQQ, I think the top is coming soon. It may be between 494 and 500 in that range. I think that's where our top is going to be. Every time we hit 500 to 494, we do reject. So look for an attempt to go higher for 494, if not 500, and look for rejection after that. That's the most likely case, in my opinion. For Apple, we may attempt to push up for 230. We'll see if we reject or not, but look for a little bit more upside. Technicals still look more bullish. As long as we don't lose 226, we favor 230. So watch to see what the reaction is for now. And that's what I'm seeing as the most likely case. Palantir, we're more bullish. We could be looking for 44 as our target, but watch that tough resistance up there. We were talking about this level yesterday, the 44 area I was talking about. So look for an attempt to get up to 44 to 45, and then we'll see if we reject in this range to start to be back down to 42. So far, we remain more bullish nonetheless. For Supermicro, we're getting very tight. We had a high up here. We came down, made a lower high. We're just getting very tight. We could be testing 45 to start tipping to 44, so watch to see if that ends up being the case. Rivian is on a bit of a downtrend. It's been making lower highs and lower lows, but the Tesla event could affect it. If we don't reclaim 10.45, we're looking for a dump to 10. If we break past 10.45, we're looking for a bounce. So give this some time. For SoFi, we look a little bit more bullish. 8.7 could be coming very soon. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt to get closer to $9. If we end up losing 8.4, we're looking for 8.16. So we'll see how things end up going. For the IWM, we're completely range bound. We have basically 218 as resistance and 217 or 215 as support. We're stuck in the middle going back and forth and back and forth. So give this the time it needs. If we break past 218, we're looking for a bigger push for 220. If we lose 215, we're going to be looking for a dip. We're still stuck in the middle. So we're waiting for the PPI report. AMD has been dipping, approaching its very, very important event. Unfortunately, despite their new chips that they're planning to mass produce, it was like a buy the rumor, sell the news event as we pushed approaching the event. Now we're kind of dipping. So it could be dipping lower to about the 158 area. So be mindful of that. For Coinbase, we're kind of bearish. We came all the way down to about 163 only to rebound. We could be looking for 167 to be retested. So we'll see how that goes. For Amazon, we're kind of stuck in the middle. If we break past 188, we're looking for a push back up towards 190. If we lose 185, we're going to be looking for a dip back down to 183. Amazon's pushing very nicely, but at 188 is a tough resistance, so we're at risk of coming down to 185. So give this the time it needs. For Meta is dipping right now. If we break past 587, we're looking for a push. If we fail to do that, we're looking for a dip to about 577. I think the odds are favoring Meta dipping a little bit as we have 30 states suing them and a lot of negative news. We could pop with PPI data tomorrow morning to 590, but then I see a dip to 577 coming very soon. Microsoft is rejecting off 420, has not been able to hold above that. So the odds are varying this dipping back down towards the 410 area. For Google, we are kind of rejecting as well. We have big bank earnings. We'll see how that affects us. But there is a risk of us coming down to about the 161 area. We'll see what happens with DJT. This is pushing so far. 25 is her potential target. The VIX, we'll see if we lose 20.75. If that fails us, we could come down to the 19s to fill the gap as the market pushes higher. But then later on, I do think what's going to happen is the market's going to dump and the VIX will fill this gap up above. We'll see when that happens, but that's what I'm viewing, at least for the time being. The 10 years still breaking out, which is a little bit more negative for our economy. The dollar is still breaking out, which tends to be bearish. We're waiting to see if this affects us. We're still waiting. Be very patient. So that's what my view of the market is. We could push a little bit higher, but as we get closer to all-time highs, be careful because once again, I think the market's going to form a top soon, and then there's going to be a big rug pull coming as we get closer to the election, if not a little bit afterwards. For Tesla, don't forget about the Robotaxi event, guys. I want to thank you all so much for listening. So please have a great day. I hope Tesla unveils some new models, which will be very bullish for the share price. So be patient and do what you have to do. Thanks again, and peace out.